Me again. Can't go wrong, right? Good morning, everybody. If you haven't checked in, please do. Thank you. Well, we were doing this. Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay. Cheryl, Lee, and the folks who were helping at the back table, Becky, Becky. Anyone else you could grab. Good morning. We are right at a quorum, so if you could have your bring your cake and beverages and have a seat, we're going to get started. I believe that this meeting will be very efficient because we only have one item, but we will take our time and have whatever discussion we need about that item. I'm just waiting for the clock to roll over to 11:50. There it goes. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for this special congregational meeting. Welcome to those here in the sanctuary and those online. Really appreciate your willingness to gather again today for this important business of our congregation. You should have received Zoom links for voting if you are not here. And if you're here in the sanctuary, you should have received your voting card, checking in the back. As I mentioned, we are exactly at our quorum of 76, so don't anybody walk out of the room. Just as a reminder, you are a voting member if you've been a member in good standing for more than 90 days, which for those of us who don't want to have to figure that out would be March 12th of this year. If you are joining via Zoom, you are considered to be here in person. And anyone who's not a member can watch our meeting this morning via the YouTube stream. For our virtual attendees, if you've not yet added your second screen share, or if you have someone with you, names to your screen, please do so, so that we can track that there's two of you. If you've done that already, thank you. That's part of how we're counting for our quorum. Just a reminder for the Zoom folks, when you get to the polling screen that you will see will have person 1 and person 2. So you can, if you're with someone, vote accordingly. If you are a single person on your screen, then there's a no second person present option you can select. Again, we will be voting on anything as a yes, a no, or an abstain. And I appreciate your patience while we do our count here in the sanctuary, as well as our tellers working with the virtual folks do their count. Then we'll merge those numbers and go from there. And I'm just confirming, Sandra, we have our quorum. Yes, thank you very much. So we have 76 eligible voters for our quorum today. I would like to ask someone to make a motion, since this is a special meeting of the congregation, to allow me as board president to serve as chair pro tem to preside. Thank you, Lee, as a motion, and Bill, got it. And all those in favor of allowing Carla Williams, president of the board, to serve as chair pro tem to preside at this meeting, please vote. And I'm going to let our counters do their thing. And if our counters, will someone eventually let me know if we've done our counting, then we'll let you all put your hands down. So do we have a number? I'm sorry? Yes, I'm sorry. We are voting at this moment to allow me as president of the board to chair this special meeting. Boring, 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 tedious, tedious, governance, governance. Oh, don't fall asleep yet. Bring the cake. Oh yeah, you can, of those in favor, you can lower your things, and then anyone who has a no vote? Anyone have an abstain? Okay, so do we have a count on the yes votes? It looks unanimous. Do we have a vote from our on-screen folks? Adam? I know this is tedious for something like this particular motion, but I like to try and mirror the procedure that we need to follow. Thank you.
Carla, we're waiting for the online. 22 yes.
22 yeses and nothing. Okay, great. Very good. That motion passes. I'm gonna thank you all. Appreciate that. So now we can get to the good part. So what I'd like to do, if it's all right, we have one item of business. Ann McAllister is serving as parliamentarian today. Thank you, Ann. And thank you, Adam and Reverend Susan and Sandra, for their help with this special meeting. The only order of business to vote on are the bylaws changes that have been recommended by the Endowment Committee and approved by the Board of Trustees for consideration by the congregation. These changes were discussed in the newsletter and at a town hall Zoom meeting on May 1st. Detailed information about the changes went out to the congregation 30 days before this meeting. These bylaw changes must be approved by 2/3 of those present and voting. So someone else will do the math on that one. Based on the quorum present, okay, I'm gonna have to do that right now, right? So anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. 50, thank you. See, I knew I could count on someone to step into the breach. Okay, thanks, Harry. So what I'd like to do is have us move the motion and have someone second it, and then I'd like to ask Susan Comstock to do a quick review of what is involved in the motion, and then we will open the floor to any questions or comments, and then we'll take the vote. So if that's the plan. Could someone make a motion that we approve the bylaw changes to the Unitarian Church of Evanston Endowment Fund Agreement and to Article 12 of the UCE bylaws? Carolyn, thank you. A second? Sally, thank you. Okay. Susan, would you like to lead us through the good stuff?
Okay, so I guess, Adam, you're advancing the slides, right? Thank you. Oh, details. More help. How do you turn it on? That's a good push. Oh, okay. Thanks. When you said that. I'm still struggling.
I'll just go to the next slide and make it.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. So why do we need to update the endowment agreement and the related bylaws? I want to just give you a little background here so that you understand why we're doing this work. It's, again, kind of tedious. This is kind of the legal part of what we do, but it's really important when it comes to money that we follow the rules and that we're very explicit about what we do and transparent, and that we've all agreed on what are the basics of what we do and how we do it. So the endowment agreement, if you could go to the next slide, please, hasn't been updated since 2005, and at that point it was restated. So endowment's been around for, I don't know, maybe 30 years, something like that, but it's been 18 years since the agreement was updated, and a lot of things have changed since then. For example, the fund has grown from, in 2005 it was probably $100,000, and it's now $1.6 million almost. Yeah, yay. And so we've been making distributions since maybe 2010-ish, that kind of thing, and we've learned a lot as we've operated the fund. We've also had a task force look at endowment over the last 2-some years to come up with new practices and policies, thank you, that make sense for how we operate. And so we got a lot of input from the congregation, and we wanted to incorporate that into what we do. And then finally, we hired a lawyer. For the first time, a lawyer's looked at it in 18 years. A very experienced guy, head of the National Practice for Estate Planning, Kirk Hoopengardner, from Quarles and Brady. Bill Harkering, my co-chair for endowment, and I were very, very pleased with the level of advice we got. So that's why. And then we also need to update the UCE bylaw, the section of the bylaws that goes with the endowment agreement, because that was also out of date. Now, a lot of you will have read the recommendations from the task force, and most of those recommendations are going to be in policies and procedures. The endowment agreement itself is really more like, kind of like a bylaw. So it's the legal framework, and most of the recommendations won't be in this legal framework, but we still need you to approve it. Okay, so just a couple of basics about what's the endowment fund. It's a restricted fund of the Unitarian Church of Evanston. I already talked about the size. We give away, per the limitation in the agreement, no more than 5% of the balance each year, which is about $75,000. And let me just give you a little aside right now about how we've been spending that money. So just, for example, this year, We gave $20,000 as a matching grant for the Evanston Reparations Community Fund. We gave $7,500 to an innovative program called Ready for Reentry, which is a pilot program jointly developed by Heartland Alliance and the Illinois Department of Corrections that helps returning citizens at a high risk of experiencing gun violence when they return to their communities after incarceration. We gave $13,000 to support rent and child care for an Afghan refugee family, which is being very actively supported by UCE's Immigrant Solidarity Team. $6,000 went to supporting food and supplies for the soup kitchens we hold and a weekend breakfast program through Interfaith Action. And about $26,000 went to projects supporting our congregation, including building repairs, garden improvements, choir section leads, some training programs. There's also some smaller grants that we've done, including $1,500 to the Native Community Solidarity Team to support a theater production put on by Reba Place Church. So about 2/3 of the money we give away goes to support the community in which we live and operate, and about 1/3 to support projects within UCE. It's really, really important funding because it allows us to live out our mission. And it gives our teams resources so they can support the groups that they're working with. It's really exciting that we have this as a resource within UCE. All right, enough of the aside, back to the main thing here. So what we call the Endowment Agreement, it's kind of like bylaws, except we're not a separate legal entity. We're a restricted fund of the church, so it's not bylaws, but that's what its function is. And it sets out the responsibilities of the elected trustees who run the endowment committee. And it also sets out the restrictions on how funds can be used so that when people donate to the endowment agreement, they know there's guardrails about how the funds will be used. And then the trustees manage the fund, and then we can appoint endowment committee members to help us get the work done. So, what are the changes we're making to the endowment agreement? We're fixing the out-of-date mechanics that are in the agreement. For one thing, we're changing the fiscal year to the church year from the calendar year. We're including the role of the endowment committee in analyzing and recommending grant requests to the UCE Board of Trustees. We actively do that on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and that wasn't included before. We're changing how we calculate the maximum annual distribution amount from 5% of the previous December 31st fund balance to 5% of a rolling 12 quarters average fund balance, because that's the best practice in the industry. We're clarifying language that is no longer considered necessary and is very confusing, so that it's an easier document to read. And we're increasing the potential number of trustees from 3 to 5 because there's a fair amount of work that we do on endowment. So we still have a minimum of 3 trustees, but we could now have as many as 5. So that's one thing, the endowment agreement, and that's an appendix to the UCE bylaws. But we also have a small section in the UCE bylaws that explicitly addresses endowment right in the body of the bylaws. And doing this change to the endowment agreement makes that article out of date. So the language will be simplified to just refer to the endowment agreement, which will be an appendix, and not repeat language from it. And also there's an existing reference to the endowment fund as being a separate legal entity. I don't know how that ended up in the UCE bylaws because it's never been true. We are not a foundation. We're a restricted fund owned by the church. And so these changes are just to correct that. This was on the website, and it's still out on our website on the endowment page. So I'm not expecting you to read that, but you can see that the new language is read. There's not very much of it because it's kind of just referring to the fact that we've got, or it takes into account the fact that we've got the endowment agreement as an appendix, and then most of the existing stuff is just crossed out. So, questions? And Adam, you want to see, or whoever's dealing with the online people, want to see if there's any questions in the chat online before we move on? I know, this is really, really boring stuff, so we really, really appreciate. Come on up, Kathy.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, sorry. Yeah. So, thank you. I forgot about that. So on the draft of the endowment agreement, we had the date of the annual meeting because we thought we only needed to give you 2 weeks notice. It turns out a change to the bylaws requires a month notice. That's why this is an oopsie cake and a lemonade kind of celebration, because you're very kindly accommodating the fact that we didn't realize we needed a month notice on the change in the bylaws. And so what you're voting on will be that the endowment agreement will have a date of June 11th, not the date from the, that was on the draft that you saw online. Thank you, Kathy. Yes. Yeah, come on up and talk in the mic though so the people online can hear you. Because I can't hear you either, actually. So this is Margie.
Okay, so it has to do with the question about the whole, what do you call it?
The agreement?
Yeah, well, you said from 3 to 5 for
Oh, trustees,
people, right.
the number of trustees.
So is there, are you voted on every 2 years, or is there a time limit, or is there what's the?
Right, so the endowment trustees are elected for a 3-year term, and we're going to put into our policies, not into the bylaws, that there's a limitation from the endowment task force, a limitation of total service, including time as committee members, of 7 years. So the idea is that we want new blood coming on to the endowment committee. So what's happened up until now is that people typically haven't repeated, or they don't repeat often. Like this, I'm on a repeat actually, because I served back in 2010. And typically you'll see a term of service where somebody serves as a committee member and then maybe as a trustee for 3 years and then maybe as a committee member again. But what we don't want is people being committee members for like 15 years, because we want to have, given that this is funding and that it's important, we want to make sure that people have a chance to get on the committee and have their voice heard, so that we hear a diversity of opinions about how we manage our money and how the money is distributed, the grants are distributed.
Okay, and then one real quick question. The money that's given out, like this year, whoever you gave the money to.
Right.
Is there a follow-up to find out if they've actually spent the money that they were supposed to have been given and they have been doing it in the way you're supposed to?
Yeah. We have, within the endowment committee, after an endowment grant is approved by the board, we then assign a liaison from our committee who then follows up with each of the recipients to make sure that the money's used as intended, and to retrieve any money that's not used and have it returned to the endowment fund, and to also ask them, now we're really pushing this, to write a newsletter article, and so the congregation can hear about how this funding is spent and the exciting stuff we're doing as a congregation. Thank you, Margie. Oh, Carla. Reverend Susan.
I'm just going to have a point of clarification that the bylaws say 2/3 for a change, but that the endowment fund agreement itself says 85%. Yeah.
85?
85%,
okay.
which would be 72 yeses based on the current quorum. That's what I thought you wanted to know.
Oh. Every congregation needs a lawyer on staff. Yeah.
That's all Kathy Diamant. That's all Kathy Diamant figured that out. I'm just the messenger.
You're going to say?
Unfortunately, when the parliamentarian and I met last week to go over this, we had that same discussion and I just forgot, so.
Okay.
But I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the election of trustees, so next year, they'll actually be, in addition to electing one new 3-year term, there'll be at least 2 other potential spots. So people who might be interested in serving as a trustee should be thinking about that.
Yeah, right. And people who aren't sure should approach us and ask if they can serve as a 1-year appointed committee member and try it out. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Carol?
Oh, yeah, I'll ask.
Could you explain the advantage of moving the accounting from the calendar to the church year? I'm confused on what the advantage is of that. Thank
Okay,
you.
so we used to make, great question. We used to make grant distributions and run endowment based on the calendar year. And it was so confusing for both the endowment committee and for the teams receiving grants, because a lot of times a grant will happen, like building repairs and improvements are a great example of that. We get $15,000 for that to help support the building. And when you're on a calendar year and the church is on a church year, it's super confusing about the pieces of the grant, because it's not spent all at once in April, it's spent over the course of a year. So trying to track that when it didn't align was just crazy nuts. So we started the practice of deferring when grants could be spent to the church year, and now we'd just like to make it official that the year, the fiscal year for how we do everything within endowment is July 1st to June 30th, just like UCE. And that's how the teams think, and that's how our budget works. Yeah.
Just a couple of suggestions. One, that you make a job description available of what being a trustee means,
Good idea.
as well as member of the committee.
Great.
And secondly, you may already do this, but please do it again. Make it available how the money is distributed on a yearly basis.
Yeah, and we've got this is one of the things that Adam wants to work on is a website refresh, and one of the things we need to do is make the endowment page on our UCE website more easily findable, because we list on that page what our endowment grants are, but we need to do and we also run newsletter articles, but that needs to be much more readily accessible and visible and talked about. So Gretchen, those are both great ideas. Thank you. Any questions online? Anything in the chat? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So the motion on the floor is to approve the bylaws changes to the Unitarian Church of Evanston Endowment Agreement Fund and to Article 12 of the UCE bylaws. We are now ready to vote. All those in favor, please indicate with your green card, and if you're online, please vote. We already moved it and seconded it, so it's on the floor, which is why we were allowed to discuss it. And, you know, some people do it in the reverse, but. How are we doing on the count? Can the yes votes lower their arms? Okay. Those voting no, please raise your green card. Those abstaining, please raise your green card. Thank you all for your voting. We will be waiting for the tally.
Still waiting online.
Got it. I got it. So how about those Cubs? Well, I'm just going to do a quick pitch here. So, hey, you know, your Board of Trustees meets via Zoom pretty much every month except 2 months a year. We meet in person, try to, and you're welcome to join us on Zoom. It's the third Thursday of the month at 7, and if you want to do that, all you have to do is shoot me an email or shoot an email to staff like Sandra Robinson, and we'll get you the Zoom link. So hopefully, we'd love to have you join us. It is actually a lot of fun. It is. We have great conversation. We do good work. It's a wonderful group. I'm looking forward to this year's board. Our first meeting of the new board will be in July, and we're having our last meeting of our current board, which I'm going to take the opportunity now to go ahead and thank some folks for their service. Tom Tickner has been serving on the board for a while. I think he filled a term and then he had a term and whatever. It's been like 7 or 8 years. So thanks to Tom for his service, as well as Laura Lofschutz. I don't think either of them are here today, but Laura's finishing her 3rd term on the board as well. So many thanks to them for yes, and we had 2 members who have moved, so we're very sad. David Bates Jeffries, he and his family moved to Connecticut, so he has left the board, and Emily Ekwalsana, sorry. My brain's trying to do 2 things at once here, not successfully. Yes?
We're good. 46 yes online.
46 yes online, which puts us at a total of 9. Whoa. All right, help me with the math here. 46, 54, sounds like 100. So we not only met, we exceeded our required amount. So thank you all. Appreciate that. So that motion carries. I'd like to thank everyone again for sticking around, and I just need a motion to adjourn. Okay, I think we can take that one on faith. So thank you all. Take care.